Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Laptop Retrospective. And today we're going to be trying out a interesting title by the name of The Perfect Sniper. And with a name like that, it has a lot to live up to. So this is the first game from a studio out of Toronto, I believe. And it's a pretty simple premise. You are a sniper armed with a rifle, and you need to shoot things. And the first thing that I noticed in the initial build that I tested is that realistic iron sights, how this game has them set up for, is not exactly a positive experience, but thankfully that was a piece of feedback that was provided and listened to that made everything past this tutorial section a lot easier. So you have to fire at these targets. Each time you have to work the bolt, which, by the way, on a real SVD Dragunov, that would not be the case. It's a semi-automatic rifle, and that bolt is from another gun, but that's neither here nor there. The shooting mechanics are okay. They're not the best ones that I've seen. And as you can see, there are a variety of different aiming options available depending on what your mission is. And that is one of the strengths and also weaknesses of this particular title. And once this shooting sequence finishes, I think you'll have a pretty good, clear indication of what exactly I'm talking about. So once the mission finishes, we are going to get a nice fade to black here, and we can continue on with the rest of the main game. And there are some sections where it asks you to sit down and kind of run you through a cinematic, which is interesting in how it introduces some of the missions this way. And this really allows you to see one thing that this design crew has gotten right, and that is atmosphere and world building. The graphics work. They're obviously pretty low poly, but I'm not opposed to that if the gameplay works. So you've got a fairly well designed environment from what we can see from the car in this cutscene. We're given a picture of the target. And it's a rather elaborate way to perhaps introduce a simple mission. And as you can imagine, that's going to have some significant pros and cons. And that's going to really launch me into probably my biggest complaint, and I think the biggest complaint that most people have had with the release of this title, is that replayability is essentially zero. And that is unfortunate for a game like this that is currently on the Steam store and is the launch title, I believe, again, for the studio. So in this particular instance, I know down to the second when the target is going to come into full view, and I know he's going to stop, so I don't have anything to rush, take the shot, and the mission's over. And no matter how many times I play this mission, that's going to be exactly the same. And again, there are some missions where you're given clues as to who the target is, but realistically, it's always the same person in the same place doing the same thing, and that reduces a significant amount of the challenge and replayability. Once you've gone through this game once, the only real benefit to continue to play it would be if you had friends coming over and they wanted to try a very simplistic shooting game. And I have to say simplistic primarily because even in sections like this, when you are put in the back of a vehicle and there's supposed to be high action, you are, as the player, never in danger of death. And that has a psychological impact on the difficulty and also the achievement of playing a game like this is that, yeah, you can fail the mission if you don't hit your targets, but there's never really any risk to the player. And if there's no risk to the player, it's kind of really boring. And I don't mean that in a mean-spirited way. But if there's no risk to the player, especially in these cutscenes where if I don't shoot the cars don't do anything. They just follow me, and then eventually I get a mission failed. If the cars were shooting at the player, or if the player had a health bar, or if the vehicle could only take so much damage, then that would add an artificial stressor that would make completing the stage considerably more rewarding than it is. And again, that just kind of hurts the replayability. The cars in this instance are always going to be in the same place, going the same speeds. I suppose you could say the game is incredibly scripted in that regard, and it just doesn't age well, unfortunately. So, just to close off, there are some positives and definitely some takeaways from this. Is this a particular game that I think that is worth the purchase? I'm going to have to, unfortunately, at this time say no. It's not quite what I would want to play, and I think a lot of people would want to play. Again, the predictability of the missions and the lack of replayability significantly hurts the title. However, there are two things that are certainly worth mentioning that don't necessarily redeem this game yet, but I'll get to that in a moment. And the first is that improvements are still incrementally being made to this title. Even when I first got the key from the developer to when I decided to record this video, changes were made. Arcade mode was added, time trial mode was added, the Holo Sight was added. A lot of things have been tweaked and adjusted. So the developers do listen to the feedback that is being sent their way. So that is a positive. Is it going to save the Perfect Sniper? It's too soon to say. Updates can save a game. We've seen that with some infamous titles like No Man's Sky. However, I don't know if the core gameplay mechanics are something that can genuinely be fixed. However, and this is the point that I really wanted to make toward the end of this video, and that is to do justice to exactly how good this game looks and feels in terms of atmosphere, the use of graphics, and just the art style. This is a group of people that are clearly talented. The cityscapes, they feel very good, and I think that talent like this, or even environments like this, could be used in a much more complex, much more game-oriented game. to run out of words. Like, I wanted to put this clip in here of this flyby mission just so you can kind of get the idea of how sprawling some parts of this city are, that you travel around and shoot all of these different weapons. Lighting effects look good. It even looks especially good at night, when we'll see that in a minute. And a lot of work and talent went into the production of this game that says to me that, you know, this game might not be what puts this studio on the map. But that being said, I think that there is a significant amount of potential in what this studio will produce next. So even though The Perfect Sniper, in my opinion, falls short of earning its title, I think that there is cause to watch what the studio does in the future, And I genuinely hope that they get the opportunity to do it, because in scenes like this, when you've got care with light, characters placed in certain places, like it looks like you're driving by a busy city street at night and you can see all these different characters interacting. It just builds such a good mood, and it's in my mind, a shame that they were unable to take advantage of it this time around. But I wish them the best for the next time, because I think that they can make something really cool here. If you enjoy this sort of content, I highly encourage you to subscribe and like. If you've got any comments, leave them below, and I will see you next time. Thanks a lot.